Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Building affordable housing has been such a huge issue. And I ran across this gentleman on social media from the UK who is a modern housing, affordable housing builder using some really interesting technology. So I reached out to him, and he's here tonight to tell us about what some of the cutting edge things are that are going on in housing technology, housing construction, particularly for affordable housing. Paul Richards, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, hi, Brian. Thanks for inviting me. Very much appreciated.
So tell me a little bit about what's your mission? You post quite frequently on sort of new innovative ways of building affordable housing.
Yeah. So the idea, what we try to do is make people aware that there are people out there looking for real solutions, really, to solving how can we solve the housing crisis? Because as everybody probably knows, most of your listeners are aware of, the affordability of housing has become unrealistic for most people. And it's in the UK, we're a little bit different than you in Canada, but the issues are the same, the affordability really, and the lack of supply of quality houses. So what we did in the UK is I was part of a government program a few years back about transforming how do we use modern methods to build schools and hospitals. There's a schools and hospital shortage as well as everything in the built environment, really. But how can we tap into those known innovations and bring them down? My role was to how can I tap into those new and exciting innovations and bring them down into the housing sector, and then how could I make those new products accessible to everybody, understandable for your conventional builders, but it was then how can we make those products affordable, and there's quite a challenge there, and that's really been my sort of vocation. I dedicated myself over 10 years to this, and I've been waiting really for the UK to accept alternatives to traditional construction. I don't know if you're familiar with the ways that we build here in the UK. So we've been, and I'll give you a quick overview. We've been traditionally, only in the housing sector, we've been traditionally building houses with a brick and block format, really. And that hasn't changed for a couple of hundred years. But
couple hundred years, I've heard that over and over again, is that houses today are built almost the exact same way they were built 100 or 200 years ago. And every other industry has gone through such incredible amount of productivity and technological change. But housing, we still have carpenters that just nail in nails.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I was lucky enough. I worked in different parts around the world. I was in the construction industry since I was a kid. I got introduced to construction as a kid, as most people in the construction industry did, really. And I sort of evolved. I've been fortunate enough throughout my career to own factories, to manufacture products, to work with serious architects. And then as I got older, really, as I matured a little bit, and I started to wonder, why are we still building using these out-of-date methods, really? And it's really labor-intense and extremely unnecessary, costly methods. I was fortunate enough to work in the commercial construction industry, where you'll see lean construction every day. They won't build unless they've been extremely conscious of the costs, the processes around labor, the productivity, everything around commercial construction. I'm talking skyscrapers, office blocks, hospitals, and schools, really. And if you look anywhere around the world, you'll see these marvelous buildings going up. But here back in the UK, when it comes to housing, we were still using a traditional brick and block. And it's the fundamentals behind why. I mean, they've got a couple of hundred years of really understanding and supporting that traditional mindset, the way we mortgage houses, the way we improve houses. That's pretty embedded into the UK culture. What I wanted to do, and I never thought it was going to happen, was I wanted to use my known experiences in other industries and bring that in to help transform the UK, the way we build traditionally, the way we build in the UK, but at scale. And where the opportunities arise, and this is probably why you see me active on LinkedIn, really, is because I understand the processes exist everywhere around the world. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, is probably the best way of saying it. and a lot of the techniques that have been proven and the products that have been proven in daily activity around construction sites around the world. All my role, I could see my role was the ability to pull them together and get people that wanted to be active in change to engage really and open up to me. Because what we did at the construction, so I was at the Construction Innovation Hub, which is what I touched on earlier, and that was our largest, the UK's ever largest government-funded research program for transforming construction. And I think it had an £85 million budget to talk about and trying to adopt and get the industry to adopt modern thinking, modern methods. From that, I learned quite quickly. And what was key to this, what was key to having some success there, was the ability for industry, because we were all in competition with each other, to leave the ego at the door and collaborate openly around a table about the opportunity of change. And it was, for me, it was the ability to mix with people I wouldn't ever mix with in the industry. You know, it was the what we call them tier one contractors. So the really big 100, 200, 300 million pound contractors. I was sat at the table with them, and I could have a one-to-one with them and discuss about me as an innovator and the other innovators in the room, how we could look at changing that industry. And the beauty of it was we took not only construction industry, but we took leaders in other industries, other evolved industries, like the aircraft industry, like the Formula One, like the aerospace industry, and like the car making industry. So around the table in the hub, we had a pool of expertise. And what we did is we tapped into them and tried to find some sort of common sort of ground that we could all work on. And that was the start of it. It was how could my role, was I was there purely for housing. I wanted to take these technologies and inform the housing industry globally, really. And that's why I try to put as many posts as I can out on LinkedIn. And why I use LinkedIn is because it's an open platform really for people to comment to me, whether they like what I'm saying or not, or for me to highlight some of the other successes some of the other people around the world are having. And it's just sharing that open information.
But Paul, give us a sense, if you could. We'll go through this in a little bit more detail in a couple of minutes, but give us a sense. What are you talking about? Are you talking about, modular housing, manufactured housing? What is these new technologies that you're trying to bring to the housing industry?
Okay, so in the UK, we arrived at a term called modern methods of construction, MMC, we call it. Now, you've just mentioned modular, and that falls under an umbrella of a load of acronyms, really. So you've got industrialized construction, off-site manufacturing, but they all come out in the UK. They fall under this term of MMC, modern methods of construction. So it's how can we look at house building using modern methods? Now, you mentioned modular, and yeah, most of what we do in the UK is around a pattern book of house types and styles. So when we talk about transforming your material choices, we look at optimizing the materials, and we go to, as a builder, we go to our normal larder of materials, really, and we say, what would we normally build with? Timber, concrete, steel, and some hybrid materials that are coming along the way, some composite materials that are coming along the way. But it's about, we do what's called a QFD process. So at the engine, this is something we learned from the aircraft engineer. I had an engineering background as well, so I sort of cottoned on their methods of their material drawdown selection. So if they're going to build an aeroplane or a rocket ship, they won't just start off with okay, we want to make it out of timber. They won't make it out. They're going to look at what materials can we choose that are fit for purpose, and they have what they call a QFD process. And what that is, easiest way to explain it is it's a material drawdown selection. So it's like a top trumps of material. So I don't know if you played, probably you lot are hockey and basketball, I'm guessing. So you might have, as a kid, you might have played with your top trump cards. And on there, on each card, you will have the pros and cons of everything associated to that player. But in the construction industry, we have those material drawdown selections, and we have the pros and cons of each material. And when you go down through a material drawdown selection, you have your criteria. So you might say, okay, Canada has an abundance of timber, a lot of natural resources. Timber extremely well versed, extremely well forested and maintained in Canada. So what you do is ultimately your first material that may come to mind would be, let's build these future houses using timber, primarily timber. And it's then you go down through that process and you say, okay, what am I going to do with this timber? What are the spans? So down to, we do what's called define the need. Now, when we look at our house site, and I know I'm going on a bit, so you stop me if you want me to explain it. We do what's called a define the need. So if you're talking about a house, what is a house? That's primarily, we break it down into the fundamentals. What is a house? What do we need from a house? And then it's okay. We need somewhere safe and warm and secure, and somewhere to put our head down each night, somewhere warm. And it's just breaking down those steps into actually what do we actually need from a house. And when you talk about space requirements, we need a bedroom. What space do you need? A kitchen. What space do you need? A living room. What space do you need? A hallway with stairs. What space do you need? And it's defining those needs. And then once you come out with your parameters, which you talked about, modular, you end up with your modules. You end up with the size parameters that you really that you need as a house. And in the UK, we look at the shortages of houses. What is the common shortage? What is the initial need? And it starts off with a 2-bed starter home. And we go back through these QFD processes. We look at what is the footprint of a 2-bed starter home, and then what materials do we need? What materials do we need that not only suit what we're trying to build, but then suit, and this is the key, suit the processes that those materials need to go through to ultimately deliver them at the right price and at the right volume. And that's really key to it. So it's about defining the need. What's your space sizes? What are your easily accessible materials? And that's what a lot of people forget.
So in Canada, we have a housing need,
Yes.
and probably a lot of the same reasons why we need the housing is exactly what you've just described.
Yeah.
But what we tend to do is we either build large condominium towers, or we build large single family residences. And it seems that the need that we're not building is the starter home that you've just described. It's the 1 or 2 bedroom. It's the smaller bungalow. It's the place where either a starter home, a family just starting out can live, and or maybe it's someone that's downsizing can live. But it seems like we build everything for the family of 4 or 5. It's the 3 and 4 bedroom single family dwelling, and we don't build duplexes or quadplexes, and those small laneway houses, those granny suites, as well as I think a lot of people think, and they've been described often as the missing middle, that we just don't have that housing.
Yeah, so you're spot on. So the need, really, the affordability crisis, it is affecting the younger and the older. While you're working each day, you have that income that you can try and navigate through the rising costs of life. But when you're starting out, it's a huge cost, and the cost have been allowed to rocket, and that I think is a separate issue that we can talk about another day. But
isn't that because we just have had no sort of improvements in productivity? When I think about any other industry, you've got these dramatic improvements in productivity, and here we still have got a bunch of contractors and carpenters and bricklayers that go on site, and I've been told that there's waste, for an example, in a typical lumber built house of 15-20%, where you're cutting off excuse me, all those trusses and boards and whatnot, and you're throwing it out. And that wouldn't be acceptable in any other kind of typical manufacturing environment.
Absolutely.
Plus, we're doing it outdoors, and in the UK, you're dealing with rain. In Canada, we've got rain and snow, and so a lot of the year you're dealing with pretty inclement weather that you're building in. And if you were building in a factory, in any other industry, it'd be a heck of a lot easier.
So you've touched on quite a few issues there. You've talked about optimizing your materials, getting the most out of your materials, really, and then you've talked about the working conditions on site. So you've crossed quite a few issues that pretty much nobody's ever addressed before. And you talked about factory production. Ideally, we want factory production. I've owned factories as a kid. I started out when I was a nipper. I owned my first factory probably 22, 23. And I carried on that for the majority of my adult life. And then I grew up. I realized, hang on a minute, we don't need to have fixed factories. And I'll talk about the Thunder House. Remind me of that one in a second, and I'll come back to that. But what you talked about is about efficiencies and when you talk about industrializing. So if we're going to deliver housing on a mass scale, we need to have we need to put our industrial heads on. Really, that's the best way of saying it. We can't look at building ones and twos. There's absolutely, those days are gone of the builder trying to make money building ones and twos. It's difficult. Materials are expensive. Trade labor is expensive. Land is expensive. The only way you're going to build, the volumes are short. Canada got 500,000. Is it 500,000? No, more than that. 5 million shortfall of housing, I think, was the last time I heard the shortfall that they're trying to fill. That ain't going to happen.
CMHC, Canadian Mortgage and Housing, has said that we need 3.5 million additional homes over what we would have been building anyway in the next 8 years by 2030. That's actually less than 8 now, to get to any kind of level of affordability. Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, has come out with a report saying there's going to be 2 million people looking for homes in the next 5 years, and 1 million of them won't be able to find homes. Paul, we got to take a break for some messages. We'll be back with Paul Richards from the UK talking about housing, affordable housing, and how we build it at scale. Stay with us, everyone. Back in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Paul Richards. He's coming to me from the United Kingdom. He is an expert in affordable housing being built at scale through more modern construction methods. And it's been so far an interesting conversation about how he's thinking that we need to really change and become more productive, more innovative, et cetera, in the construction industry. And he says that in the UK, they're building homes the same way they were building it 200 and 300 years ago. Well, I think, we're building homes the same in Canada that we were 100 years ago. And we talk about, huge amount of waste on construction sites, constructing in inclement weather, not having enough skilled labor. We've got to think through whether there's a different way of doing it. I came across Paul on LinkedIn, where he posts, very frequently, almost every day, about something interesting that's going on in the construction industry. I got to ask you, Paul, one of the posts you did most recently was really interesting. It was about a Dubai healthcare city. And it was really interesting. It almost looked like a spider web of different things and incredible, where transportation was integrated right into the structure itself. Tell me a little bit why, you thought that this, you described it as a creative integration of digital and sustainable architecture, geographic and social conditions, acknowledging the future needs of tourists and citizens. Tell me about why you were so intrigued by this development.
I'm trying to, so again, it's back to the mindset of the traditional builder, really. I've had pushback and I've been part of a big movement about transforming construction and forward thinking using advanced materials. And I'm trying to appeal to the builders, the on-site guys that are in their 30s and 40s. They've probably got another 20 years ahead of them. And when we talk, and I meet with them frequently, and when we talk about trying to advance or open their mind to possibilities, really, about what is coming, these posts are showing, because you're going to see the evolution. The builder today will evolve. You will see some of them start to evolve and use modern materials. I already see it. But in order to, that video, for example, I've put out to say, how long in the not too distant future do you think this will be? And that's really to get the builders of today thinking, if they've got 10, 20 years left in them, it's about time they start waking up and looking what the future looks like. And is it using traditional methods? Will these cities be built using traditional mindsets? And the answer to that is no. And I think what we're seeing is in architecture, you're seeing the adoption of AI, helping them quickly generate. I've seen it in the last 6 months, a huge transformation in the architectural designs that some of the architects are now starting to work with. And it's that's great. The architects can design it, but are the constructors ready there? Or are they geared up? Or are they planning ahead to be able to deliver these products? Because everything you see on that video, there are versions of that that exist around the world already today. And it's a matter, what you'll start seeing is the client starting to want this type of building. Dubai, some of the guys I've worked with have built in Dubai, and they will be the sort of guys that would be involved in delivering this technology. And what I'm trying to say is, look, the world's forever getting smaller. I read an article about how many millionaires have recently left other countries to live in Dubai, and I'm saying Britain has the same, Canada has the same. You have an awful lot of wealthy people coming in, and they're looking to settle and spend their money in a city that is what they see as their future. And I think that, and the people, places like Dubai are going to attract the wealth.
And why is that? That's because they're more innovative. That's because taxes are lower. What is it?
I think the weather is better for a start. I think I mean, this is
I don't
June.
know. It's pretty hot.
Yeah, this is June. Where it's June in July, and I got a jumper on. So June in England. Yeah, I think it's the eight. For me, I don't know about you. I like the UK, and you obviously like Canada. I like Canada as well, apart from the cold. I'm not a big fan of the ridiculous cold that you suffer. But I think it's just it's an excitement. I think they go there, but I think they go for a period of life and then go back to settle. I think it's something you'll do in your life, and then as you get older, you might settle somewhere else. But it's how do you attract the new money, really? And that's what everything about construction. It's great, everybody designing stuff, but unless the money's there, it doesn't get done. So it's how do you attract new money? And the same with Canada. And if we go back on housing, so it's that was just a post I put out to try and show the builders, because I talked with it. There's probably at 20,000 odd connections I've got, most construction on LinkedIn, and it's showing there are people on their different journey of transforming construction. They're at different levels of understanding of what modern methods might mean to them, and it's for them to give them an idea. I mean, in construction, I didn't want my kids to go into construction, for example, because of the hard, the tough environment that they have to work in, and the paying conditions, really, and how that impacts on their life with a traditional mindset. But what we're trying to do, we got a shortage of new entrants coming into construction because really construction at the moment doesn't play to their ambitions. It doesn't play to their strengths. The youngsters coming through are quite smart. And what I'm trying to do by these posts is saying, look, this is the vision of construction in the not too distant future. Start engaging now, get understanding what it starts to look like, hone your skills now. So when these projects do come not too far down the line, you can, this is really what you want to be doing. Because those building projects like that's going to be fun. There's going to be lots of money around. And I think for the youngsters, they need to see that if they are going to dedicate their lives or put their career into something, is construction as it currently stands a career that they would choose? And I don't think it is. And it's just a way to try and excite the kids, really.
Well, that's one of this video that you put forward and commented on really captured my imagination. So I can imagine that it does. It as I mentioned, talked about this future need of tourists and citizens of Dubai, the world's largest medical tourism center in the Persian Gulf. The project is defined in 5 different layers with a pedestrian-oriented approach. Each layer is dedicated to a specific use. An underwater layer consisting of the main entrance, the only access route for cars and public transportation, as well as pedestrian access and public green spaces. The next level, a futuristic approach of design and design for future predicted transportation. And then on the land level, a crescent-shaped site plan symbolizing the traditional Arabic architecture style and embracing 14 buildings for educational and cultural uses dedicated to different medical functions. And then the last 2 upper levels consist of a parametrically designed suspended path providing exclusive access to the residential zones. Like it was just amazing. It looked like the Jetsons, and it's being built today.
You'll see a lot, and that's probably, you'll see a lot of the architects now taking advantage of the design tools, and but I'm giving you an idea, a vision of what I believe will actually happen, and it's not that far away. And that's really, I use examples of that, like I said, to try to engage the youngsters into construction. That's really my role.
And at the same time, Paul, I think you do a really good job. I apologize for interrupting, but I want to challenge you here because you point out some of the failures too. And there was a post about Victoria backing away from a commitment to build 80,000 homes every year.
Yeah.
And you were pretty hard hitting. You said, could this be the future headline here? People who set these targets without understanding the construction industry are just fooling future generations of homeowners. The money, the workforce, the organization just does not exist anymore. For years, the housing industry hasn't been left to industry to evolve, but it simply hasn't. Things have gotten worse. And because of this, the smart money, smart workers have moved on. I listen daily to people talking about housing shortages. I hear hundreds of consultants talking about what needs fixing, but it's just talk. Without commitment to innovation, how can this change? The fact is, not many people within the construction industry are interested in changing the way housing is delivered. People have tried opening large factories, but haven't been able to take them through the innovation period, which unfortunately, that's unknowingly exactly what they're doing the second they decide to start a factory. Innovating takes a certain breed of people, usually instigated by an individual who directs the team. A great team is one that can speak openly, right or wrong. But innovation, while paying for a factory the size of a small country, is stupid. You must do your own innovating, very, very well timed. Again, you can't learn that without experiencing it. So who's been doing this work? Who has addressed every aspect of construction, every aspect, and spent time in road testing and tweaking? Obviously, the Ireland government didn't. Will the UK? Fortunately, in the UK, someone has. But will they get listened to? Pretty hard hitting. You're saying the state is running out of money, they backing out of 80,000 home commitments, and no one's innovating.
Absolutely. So that is my words for word, really what you've just read out there, Bri. But that story could be that. So that's a typical conversation, really. So I speak all around the world, and I speak with like-minded people like myself. They are trying, who have dedicated their lives to try and bring change to the housing industry. And so I'm pointing out. So that was sent to me, and I've added my comments to it. But it is about bringing awareness about how easy it is to set these targets without understanding the reality of trying to deliver on those numbers. I mean, I listen to a lot of consultants. A lot of them are friends of mine, and when I used to advise a lot of the consultants as well. So when I hear them quite easily spout these figures, I think, okay, great, but come on now, tell people how we're going to do this. Tell people how we're going to solve this, and actually put a spade in the ground and start. Where do we start? And that's really what I've been desperate to happen here in the UK. So I have been stuck waiting for so we've got a general election, July the 4th. So I've been waiting now for probably the last, seriously, 8 or 9 months to see when the election was going to be called. And then what the parties are going to say, are they going to commit to housing? And that's it. Because the next question out of everybody's list, out of everybody's mouth will come, okay, great. Now, how are you going to do that? And that's the question people should be asking. It's okay for a political party to say, vote for me. I'm going to deliver 300 or extra 1.5 million houses in an extra or 1.5 million houses during the time of office. That's great. How are you going to do it? Because they're doing it with a decreased labour. They're doing it with increased costs. Everything's cost gone up. Land, materials, professional services. Everything's gone up. Now you're not going to hit those targets without looking to adopt innovation. And it's, what is that innovation? Is that innovation real? And that's where it scares a lot of people, especially in the construction industry. If you and in any industry really. If you talk about innovation really, if you're coming from a need, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to start a process. What do we want I start backwards. So I look at what we're trying to achieve, and I work backwards. I step backwards to try.
You asked me to ask you about Thunder Factory. Is that one of your innovative solutions?
Thunder House, yeah. So Thunder Factory, yeah. Thunder House. So yeah. So we talked about factory production. Ideally, Brian, factory production is the way forward. It's a controlled environment. You don't get rained on. That's probably key to this. You're not working in the mud, and that's key. And you can introduce innovations in a controlled environment. Now, the Thunder House is my version of an on-site manufacturing assembly facility. So what we do is ideally we want factories, but factory overheads. If you're looking at, and I mentioned it, and these factories that have been built in the UK by the likes of L&G and a few others are immense. They're huge factories. So they start off with, unfortunately, they were a little bit early. A lot of the factories here in the UK, I see it in, all around the world as well, where people think we want to open a factory because automatically they think we need to produce these on a factory level and use sort of known production processes. And they're right. But the factory overhead's the killer. The day one, the day you take the keys, that factory's costing you. If you're not churning anything out, most of them don't for 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year, they don't churn anything out. Well, they're starting from a negative financial point. And what happens is they do short plans, short business plans. You usually see the VCs come in, they want to see a return on their money 3 to 5 years. That ain't going to happen with a new revolutionary way of building houses. It needs to have a longer term plan. It needs to be a 25-year plan, really. And a lot of people won't fund 25-year plans. And I think this is probably more your area of expertise. So what I believe is we need faster, more flexible ways of accessing these factory production facilities. And what I did is I design the Thunder House, which is an on-site factory. But it's not just a factory. It's just not a fixed factory. It's a building rig. And what that does is I've addressed all the aspects. I mean, I've been doing this over 10 years. Probably this has been in my head for probably 40 years since I was a kid. When I was in the ground as a youngster, rolling around in the ground, as I call it, trying to build houses in the dirt, in the rain. It's not much fun. That was never for me, and it's not for the youngsters of today. So it's how do we address and how do we work? How can we have a working built environment that the kids will work in, and they can enjoy, or even bring some of the older ones back in and give them a few more years, in a controlled environment, improve their on life working conditions, really. And that's what the Thunder House does. But it does more than that. It's a build rig. So from the aircraft industry, if you're going to build I've mentioned it in other interviews, if you're going to build a wing or a fuselage, you don't build that freestanding in a field. You'll do it in a factory controlled environment, and it'll be done under conditions, and you'll use what's called a build rig. So what the Thunder House I've done is a tracked factory that moves around the site. It's a build rig that moves on tracks around the site. I sent you a link to some of my videos demonstrating the Thunder House. But what that then does is not only will it enable you to build in a controlled environment, you can tap into untrained workers. We can specialize them in tasks and really perfect that through known production processes, really. So what that does,
which is the key in every other industry, is that you've got an assembly line or something like that, where you have some workers that specialize in one task.
You got it.
And people aren't generalists. And the problem with the construction industry is you need people that are pretty generalist. I'm in the middle of constructing an 18-story condominium on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. And it's interesting because there was a couple of levels that were a little bit strange. And the way that the people on site were describing it is they said, people don't like, the contractors don't like having to do different things all the time. When they get up to the floor where the suites are very similar, they're just going to punch it out. They're going to go house, condo by condo by condo, unit by unit by unit, and you'll see how quickly it moves. And it was exactly that, is that once they got into a standardized process and they were able to enclose the outside and worked in a more reasonable environment, they were effectively manufacturing those homes, and they did it incredibly more efficiently than when they were doing it in a more unique, specialized way.
Correct. Yeah. So there are lots of ways of delivering apartments, and one of them is using a cassette system, which is similar to what you just described there. Now, because you've seen volumetric builds, so you've modules going on the back of lorries, going on the back of trucks, up and down your freeways. So they're modules that come out of a factory at the moment. Are you familiar with that?
Sure, we've got to do more of it, but that prefab modular housing there's been a lot of resistance to it.
Oh, massively, because so there's a gap, and I'll try and explain the gap. Your commercial guys, the guys building your skyscrapers using all the advanced technology you can, they're in their world. They're not interested in coming down into the housing market because the housing market is so how can I say it, confusing is probably the best. The issues, the people that try to stop developments, all the obstacles, the code differences, it's a bit of a minefield. Now, if you look at traditional construction guys, if you look at the other end of the spectrum, you've got the traditional construction guys. They don't understand these advanced technologies. A lot of the digital world that the commercial guys take care of, that has to be your vocation. You have to have studied that for a fair few years before you can understand.
Yes and no. When this condo that I was mentioning, I was touring it just recently, and all those contractors, all the other people working had like, phones or iPads with the designs right on the iPad. They were doing exactly everything was digitized.
Absolutely. So you're talking about digital twins, which really didn't exist in the construction industry until recently. And some of them, so in the UK, we have different housing types, and you're talking about a digital twin, which is something I delved really deep into, digital twins and what that can open up. And that's really my area of focus as well. So we talk about a platform approach. So I'll just address what our approach to modular is, as you described it. There would have been a factory somewhere that would have produced a box, transported that box to site, and those boxes would have been craned together to form your structure. That's how it works generally now for apartments or condos. And what we've done is we've got a demand for it in the UK. A huge demand. So they came to me last year. One of the big contractors came to me last year and said, "Look, we don't want to own a factory. This is the key to it, because your tier one contractors don't know how to run factories. They don't. They'll employ somebody that might not be very good at a factory, and then suddenly they're losing money. So ideally, they don't want to own a factory. This is the tier one contractors I mentioned earlier." So if you've got a private owner, like you just said, yeah, he might have his factory, plenty of them, plenty of good ones in Canada, plenty of good ones in America. I talk with them frequently. They've done it for years. They know what they're doing. What I'm trying to do is there's a different. So normally the construction site's miles away, and I'm using your scenario in particular. The construction site is miles away from the factory that produced the modules, the boxes. So you have that transportation cost. And then you have a staging area where the construction may be held up for whatever reasons, but the factory wants to get rid of the boxes. They don't have the room for the boxes. So you're paying for a very expensive staging area. So you pay for transport, pay for staging, and then eventually it's going to be built into, and I'm talking when we're talking thousands of blocks, not a few. I'm talking on a mass scale. And what I got asked, is there another way of, so schools and hospitals are built how you're describing, using that's called a volumetric building. So it's a box really. It could already have your kitchen in it. It could already have your bathroom in it, your bedrooms. That's a volumetric box. We do it here in the UK. You see two halves, it goes together on site, gets craned together on site, and that forms your house. It's quite good, but it's not flexible enough, or is it viable in the UK? For many reasons. What I got asked to do was look at the way that they build schools, but using a cassette system. So what you described, your module starts off as a cassette. You've got a floor pan, a ceiling pan, and they get assembled in a factory, and then the boxes are transported as finished boxes. Now, out of your condo, for example, a lot of those boxes are empty. You might have your bathroom in one section, you may have a kitchen in another section, but some of them, the hallways or other boxes are empty. So that's a lot of empty space being transported, a lot of unnecessary cost. What I was asked to do is there a way of being able to assemble cassettes on site and insert them direct into their final resting place? Less cranes, less transportation, less staging, and instead of transporting one module on the back of a truck, can we transport 5 or 10 modules on the back of a truck? And that's where it's about how the industry evolves, and it's how we take those savings along the way. It's using a commercial mindset, an industrial mindset, and saying, okay, we've got a lorry going there anyway, but can we put more on that lorry? And it's how do we do it, and then what benefits can we do by transporting cassettes? So what some of the people I'm involved in, they're looking to set up manufacturing or assembly areas in different countries are looking to send components now using a digital twin. So if I looked at your building, for example, I could break that down into a kit of parts. I could break your boxes down into individual components. I could number them, I could tag them, and I could get that fabricated anywhere in the world. I could drop that, and this is really what Gerwood is about. It's really what I'm about, and it's really what the UK government is now realised is the way that we can tap into the capacity in all the factories that currently exist in the UK. How can we, if we've got to build this vast number of housing shortage, can we tap in to capacity that already exists in manufacturers around the UK so that we can all share in the economic benefit of coming together, coming together. So that's really what it is. We do a digital twin of a building.
So it's not what I would describe as modular housing. It's different parts of the building, the house being built off site and being brought in. It's almost like plug and play. It's
plug and play. Plug and play is a good term. So so they're called sub-assemblies. So the component is a sub-assembly. So for example, if we were going to do it in timber, you wouldn't get a bit of 2x4, as you call it, cut to length and as a bit of bare material. That would be prepped. It would be notched. It may have holes in it. It may have clips already fixed to it. It may have a channel cut in it. So it's that material has already been packaged, ready to be assembled.
Well, I've been told that just roof trusses assembled off site to put a roof together is incredibly cost efficient. We got to take another break for some messages, and we're going to be back with Paul Richards in just 2 minutes with some concluding comments. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm having a really interesting conversation tonight with Paul Richards, who is an expert on affordable housing built at scale in more of a factory-like way, and is a real critique of the current way that we manufacture housing, and an innovator in describing it's not quite modular housing. It's sort of, I've described it as plug and play, but it's components built off-site in factory settings and brought on-site to make it more efficient. But what you're talking about, Paul, is a massive amount of change within the housing industry. And a couple weeks ago, you made a really interesting post that I was really intrigued by about Winston Churchill. And you said, if this man said he is going to build more homes, I would believe him. Are the politicians of today just making noise? I think they are. We need more quality, affordable, in every aspect homes, quality, energy efficient, safe, and desirable housing that people need today so our future generations can enjoy. And you go on, you talk about how you've concentrated on affordable housing delivery at scale, that the UK can come together to solve these issues, but the message doesn't get out. And that how do you make sure people are heard? You say, unfortunately, the industry is full of people that have observed the industry from the safety of their armchair and can eloquently articulate the issues, but after a few years of listening to them regularly repeat their observations, who's going to stand up and address these issues? You say, we need leadership. Someone who can get the job done when it counts. Someone who can speak to people and gain their confidence. Solutions exist. Lots of people have been working on viable delivery mechanisms to build the housing we desperately need. The current government seems to try to do the right thing, only to do a U-turn when it actually comes to building physical builds. We need strong leadership. Money is tight, but if there's funding, the construction industry needs to have the leadership in place to access it. Other industries have these people in place, and I've been told from senior leaders within those organizations that we, the construction industry, just don't get it. This has to change. And then you point out, I didn't know this, that Winston Churchill was a bricklayer. Is that true?
Yeah, so I've got pictures of it. Yeah, so it's well known. I don't think he built many houses, to be honest. Yeah, you can. I've got pictures of him building garden walls and stuff. I think he did it to de-stress. Times have changed. Builders now are stressing. So yeah, but it's about having leadership. Really, it's about. So I am going to say I've been part of transforming construction, and I've been in around, and I've listened to the people that I've sort of tried to get them to commit, and it's been sidelined or talked about. So what I've done over the last year is gone back to those people and said, look, come on, we've got to make a change. The UK is full of really intelligent people, but they're not heard. And what I want to do is try and highlight, and I'm doing it through LinkedIn. I mean, I pick up people like you, Brian, and I really appreciate, you know, you giving me the time now. And hopefully people in Canada will listen as they're driving home and pick up on this and want to learn more about it. Because I do talk when an awful lot of people are in Canada and in Toronto as well. And I talk with some of the advisors there. And what I'm trying to do is highlight them about there is another way. Now, I've seen factory production fell here in the UK, and I then hear the same message about somebody raising funds to open another factory around the world. And I'm trying to say, wait, think about it, take a step back, take a breath, have another think about this. And so I've been I've been saying that for about 2 or 3 years, and I'm slowly getting listened to. And luckily, other people with experience the same as me, I'm nearly 60 now. People have been in the construction industry for 40 odd years saying, I did something like that 20 years ago, and I'm thinking about coming back into the industry. And this is happening globally now. There's a group of people, some of the younger ones, I've got a couple of guys in France, a couple of guys in English, expats in China, people that have been around, they've seen what have happened, they've been instrumental in making it happen in different countries. Coming again, I talk with them now, and we're sort of collaborating on what do we think people can digest, and how can we get the information out so that people can digest it and give it a go. And that's key to this. If it don't work for them, fair enough. They then got a valid viewpoint on that. But give modern, go and have a look at what's being done and study it and see, is this the future? And there is no doubt in my mind that modern methods is the future. It's the only way forward. You're going to see more industrialized construction. You're going to see more robotic elements being done. You're going to see more materials being manufactured using 3D printed houses. I mean, a few years ago, I saw some 3D printed houses and I thought this will never happen. I posted, and I'll send you it, Brian. I posted, I think it was in Australia, a town where they 3D printed the houses. I was in awe. I was gobsmacked at how good they were and how fast they were.
I think you're right. And I'm excited about the opportunity. I think also our zoning rules, our building permit rules have to adapt. And I'm told in Canada, I'm not sure what your situation is, but I'm told in Canada that a lot of our current building permit, regulation wouldn't allow some of the innovation to occur.
Brian, you've just said it. People put obstacles in the way. So, you're talking about millions of people around the world can't have a house because somebody's putting an obstacle in the way, an unnecessary barrier to people owning their own home. And I just think that has to stop. There, we've just had the Labour manifesto yesterday about and they're promoting housing. It's not going to be easy for them because of the people that of institutionally grown up putting obstacles in people's way. And I think that we have to break those barriers down. We have to say, look, we need housing. There needs to be a period of let's crack on with this, and reassess it once we've got a mass house building revolution underway. And I think that needs to be addressed. The benefits of building houses for people far outweigh the obstacles people put in the way, and that's what need to be addressed. You've just talked about it. The reason why you haven't got the housing you need is because somebody come up with a way of charging for those houses to be built, or they've said, oh, we've got a weird zone or a weird code that only applies in our territory. That has to be addressed. There has to be, and this I'm talking from, this is really what is being addressed. Your codes and your zones, really, there is a way of looking at all of them and designing fit for purpose. One model that will do a base model that will meet all your codes or most of your codes. And I think that's really what needs to be addressed. And that way, Paul, you can then talk about industrialization.
Paul, we're out of time. If people want to follow you, because I've been really intrigued by some of your comments, what's the best way to connect up with you on LinkedIn or what?
Yeah, LinkedIn. So it's Paul Richards, Build LinkedIn, GUR Build LinkedIn. Brian, thank you for the time.
That's our show for tonight. Paul Richards, thank you so much. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca, even from the UK. And all my podcasts and videos go up on my website, briancrombie.com, as soon as the show goes to air. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate your Your inspiration for us to act like Winston Churchill and get things done. We need to see this as the crisis is and
Yeah.
get regulation and red tape out of the way. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, bro.